Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you'll enjoy listening to.
Join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical, transformational journey.
Hello and welcome back to the Inspired Action Podcast. My name is Jay and this is episode 114 and I'm here today with, guess what? Leta Herman.
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
Welcome back, Inspired Actioneers. If you've been a longtime listener, you know that this podcast is about inspiration and so much more.
So much more. And we've always hoped what's inspired us will inspire you. But guess what, Leta?
What?
It's the other way around.
Oh.
What inspires other people is inspiring us as well. Actually, it's both ways.
There
it's
you go.
the way.
And it's not just inspiration, but the idea of inspired action, which in Chinese is called Wu Wei.
This is the way, the Wu Wei.
Yes, for all those Mandalorian fans out there.
Yes, this is the way. And how about that Baby Grogu? Oh my God.
My God.
That is the way, right to a lot of money.
He's so adorable. Oh, right, for Disney.
Oh my gosh, he's so cute.
So for those of you who haven't seen the true Wu Wei in a Baby Yoda-like format, then yes, it's The Mandalorian.
On Disney Plus.
On Disney
It's
Plus.
not a paid, this is not a paid Disney ad. We just love The Mandalorian, the Baby Grogu. I know, but this is about the Wu Wei podcast, 2023.
This is the Wu Wei.
This is the Wu Wei.
The way.
You get, you finally got that?
Yeah, right. Well, this podcast was created to inspire your Wu Wei action in your life, which we're going to go much deeper into today. It's about taking inspired action, being more spontaneous, and listening to some higher force in your life, moving you towards the path in your life that will make you happier and actually give you a sense of fulfillment.
That's really, really nicely put, Leta. And I think reflecting back over the past few years of doing this podcast, the Inspired Action Podcast, I am so inspired and touched and grateful to all the listeners out there that inspire and connect with us and email us and write and have traveled across the world to see us. Just like every day, it's massively inspiring for me.
No, that's really true. And I feel the same way. And at the basis of this inspired action life, we're trying to cultivate the idea of transformation or a transformational mindset.
And in Chinese philosophy, this relates to the concept of the Zhenren, which is the Chinese philosophy thought of a realized human being or authentic human being. So actually, when we use the word transformation, which we do a lot on this podcast, like every other sentence, right? What we're really talking about is transforming you into your authentic self. If you're off the path, if you're out of alignment with who you truly are. Do we ever use that word transformation? What do you think?
Yes.
There should be like someone with one of those clickers, click.
Yeah,
Click.
yeah. Or, every time we say the word transformation, you have to drink.
I'm going to drink right now.
We don't want to promote that.
Green tea. I'm just drinking green tea.
Drink your green tea. Every time we say the word transformation in this podcast, I want you to take your cup of green tea, because I know all the listeners out there are drinking green tea.
Of course.
Of course, and drink. But anyway, no, I want to say one thing before we go on, that word transformation is a little hackneyed and maybe overused.
Tell us what you really think.
Yeah, no, I mean, some people think it's overused, but it's interesting that we're not talking about change, that like we all have to change into something we're not. What you just said, Jay, is so important. It's like changing back into your true self.
Right. And the reason why that word is just out there so much is because I really feel like it's lacking in so many people's lives. They see that, they want that. Everyone is trying to get them to do it in a different way. This way, which may or may not be the right way for everyone.
Yeah.
For us, this has worked and it's, it's thousands of years old or whatever. And I don't know, it's just working for us. And the Jen Ren is an authentic person. It seems like such a rarity. But honestly, the easiest way that I like to say it to people is it's like you become a wizard in your own life.
Right.
Right? Your own Gandalf.
Yeah.
Dialed in.
And sometimes, we're even so bold as to say it's like being an instrument of the divine. And, I just want to say also, that's such a good way to explain it, Jay, because, I think transformation's hard, honestly, for a lot of people. And it could be really easy when we realize all we're doing is transforming into our true selves. So it's basically undoing all the ways we've become something other than ourselves due to conforming with society and the culture around us.
I mean, we're always, if you tune into anything on any social media, on the TV, it's faster, smarter, skinnier, fatter, this, that, whatever. It's always like
stronger, more athletic.
Everything is more. However, if you don't get back to the basics, who you truly are, how can you make that, I'm going to air quote, better if you're not really authentic in there, from the beginning?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. You know what? Before we go any further on these concepts, we'll hold it on that bold.
We are inspired to update you all about what we've got going on in the Alchemy Learning Center.
And on the Inspired Action podcast.
Yeah.
Boom.
So
I'll let you do it. I'm tired.
All right, Jay. So we should let our listeners know.
Sorry, I'm not really tired. I'm just lazy. No, I'm tired.
We should let our listeners know that we recently did an interview with Michael Max on Qiological.
Yay.
And this is exciting. We have a new interview coming up soon on this podcast with Michael Max from
Here's
Qiological.
a little applause.
Yay! So if you enjoyed our Qiological conversation, there's more coming soon. So stay tuned.
And we're going to be doing a lot more interviews. We're lining them up right now. So if you know of someone who might be interested or a good match for us, send us an email, send them their stuff. We're connected. So we're actually planning out all of 2024. So boom, be on it if you want, or someone would be on it.
Yeah.
You might just get an email from us saying, hey.
And we've also got some live events coming up, including a Chinese medicine class that actually it's a series of classes on how energy flows through the channels of the body and how sometimes qi gets blocked in the channels.
They're workshop, live learning events.
And these learning events, they've been created primarily for practitioners of Chinese medicine. But if you're not a practitioner and you're just interested for yourself, we will have some interesting information about how to clear your own blocks and how to help your family with that and things like that. So check it out at alchemylearningscenter.com.
And I do think this information is important. If you're a lifetime learner, if you're a practitioner of any kind of healing and you understand how energy flows, it's a good thing to pay attention to. And Leta, you always rock a good live learning event. So if you're not doing anything, hey, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours of something you could expand your brain.
Well,
right?
I love to teach this topic. My clients, they like to clear their own energy blocks all the time. And if they get them regularly, then I want to teach them to do that at home. So that might be something everyone might like to attend. But we made this class specifically for both the practitioners and, even if a practitioner this is a 5-element Chinese medicine concept. So if you're a 5-element Chinese medicine practitioner, you still may want to come because we're going to be talking about non-needle techniques that you could use at home with your family and also yourself. And also you can teach your clients how to do them as well.
With the non-needle techniques.
Yes.
Right. Which is how I do it.
Yeah. And blocks are very common in our lives. If someone is criticizing you or being mean to you, it's likely you might get a heart protector block. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Sure, if you're really, really frightened, if you're really, really frightened, you might get a bladder block.
Yeah, bladder block is very common. If you're having maybe
it's just fear, trust, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I was trying to sing a little bit, but it didn't work.
It didn't work.
I was too scared.
I know.
Maybe I have a bladder block.
Maybe. And sometimes people are just having an existential crisis.
Oh, yeah. I have that every other day.
And you have. And, if you have an it's hard to say that word, existential crisis.
Maybe you're having one.
Yes, I'm having one about saying the word. You might get a heart block. And, Jay's made up funny names about all these blocks.
We actually use these all now because they're true from experience.
Yes, like the weepy crybaby block or the rock'em sock'em block.
Or the stick up your bleep block. I said that one.
Yes, and when you have one, that makes total sense, those words, those funny sayings she made up, because when we tell people, oh, you have the weepy crybaby block, they're like, yes, I do. I don't know why I'm crying.
Okay, well, you know what, Leta? This is not the topic of the podcast today. Surprise. But we could probably talk about that. Maybe we'll do a podcast on that.
Yes.
But if you don't want to wait indefinitely, come to the workshop. They're on Thursdays. And if you do miss them because you listen to this in 2024, guess what? They'll be in the Learning Center, the whole series. You can watch it there.
Yes.
But we'll have a link somewhere, somehow. Well, you'll be able to find it if you just go to the alchemylearningcenter.com.
And before we continue, I just want to thank everyone again, all the listeners out there. You guys have been awesome rating and reviewing our podcast.
Yay. Thank you.
We can't really thank you enough because, lately the podcast has been growing. The listenership is growing by leaps and bounds all over the world. So please, if you haven't rated or reviewed the podcast yet, it just takes a few seconds, 5 stars would be great if you feel so inspired. And even better, just a few words in a review would help so much.
It just helps other people find it, and it puts us in a placement of the chart. And, let's face it, we're like completely charted in every area of our life in podcasts. There's like a billion podcasts out there. So if we're on a chart, people are like, hey, what's that? I'm going to check it out. Or just tell a friend to check it out. We don't care. We just like lots of people hearing it all over.
And we're hitting the charts, so we're super excited about that. That's really good
And
news.
we're well over 1,000 members in the Learning Center, which is huge since we really only started it about a year or so ago. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. And we have lots of stuff coming in the Learning Center. Be patient. We're doing lots of stuff. And let's get back to the Wu Wei. We're going to Wu Wei the Alchemy Learning Center, but let's Wu Wei this podcast right now.
Let's flow with our Wu Wei. And I want to go back to this idea of change that we started with, because resistance to change is huge in our society. It's like we're in this ego-based predicament. We want to know ourselves deeply. And in search of knowing our authentic selves, often we end up rigidly holding on to what we think is our true identity. And in a way, it ends up causing us more pain and suffering than anything else.
Yeah, I think suffering is really resistance to change. And that's just my opinion, but I'm sure maybe some people agree, maybe some people disagree. And so even though we really want to know ourselves and be our authentic selves, there's this other component to Taoism to bring it all in. And the key ingredient is, guess what, Leta? Happiness, our happiness. That's the Wu Wei. Inspired action and a willingness to constantly change. Boom. There's the recipe, the ingredients.
That's great.
But I didn't say it was easy.
Right.
I didn't say it was easy.
Okay. But having a willingness to change.
But wait, I do think it is easy.
Yes, it is.
I don't want anyone to think it's hard.
Yes.
I was just being a little silly.
Okay.
But I do really think it's easy. Go ahead.
It's not easy to speak.
I'm done now.
Okay. So a willingness to change is kind of hard to cultivate. It's human nature as we grow older to become more and more habituated. Think about it. All of us, in fact, habits are the very definition of when we age. Like in Chinese medicine, they think aging is habitual life. The more habitual your life becomes, the older you become. So, that's sort of the characteristic of a child, is not being habituated. So how you behave and even how your body behaves becomes habitual. So if you do the same things over and over again, because you think that's what you like and that's, who your authentic self is, your body starts to lose the capability to do other types of things. And as we get older, then all our muscles, tendons, and ligaments become patterned to only do whatever we do habitually over and over again. So it's that variety of doing many different things that allows us not to be patterned in that way.
It's kind of like a lifelong learner, a lifelong mover, if we're going to talk about energy and chi in the body. I'm constantly fighting the maturity factor. I think we get comfortable. We want to settle into routines that don't challenge the body like it used to. So I love to embrace new physical challenges. Sure, they're silly sometimes, but I like to ensure that my body doesn't lose that mobility that it had when I was younger.
Yeah. And our minds, too, think about that. They need to be constantly embracing new ideas and not get too habitualized in thought.
Hey, remember when I had us brush our teeth with our right hands
yes.
for like a week to break that habit?
That was painful.
That was painful, right? I've done a lot of cookie things like that. But, it's a radical idea, Leta. The idea that we want to stay young by embracing the new and different ideas, theories, thoughts constantly. Well, it's kind of like that spontaneous.
Yes.
I don't know.
And even if we don't acknowledge it, We're all on a journey through life. We're all moving and changing. So resistance to the fact that we're moving and changing all the time, it's kind of pointless. So it's going to happen whether we allow it or not. And if we're not allowing it, that's the resistance.
Resistance is futile. Oh, you just set that up for me. Boom. Star Trek reference. Woohoo! Okay, so it's natural that we want to get to our place, get this place in our lives where life is good. We want to keep making it good. We don't want to move in any direction. I'm not sure, like, is that being stuck? Or is that just being rigid? Is that just being comfortable? Why do we get stuck? Why don't we want to move and expand?
When something's good,
in general, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, when something's good, we want to keep it good. Until maybe something forces us to change, or maybe we have a big life crisis, some big event, a life-changing event. We don't want to stand still so long that big life-changing event comes like a tidal wave and blows us over.
Yeah, if you're trying to keep everything the same, then maybe the only change that's going to come is a negative one, and you're not going to want that. I talk about it often when I go into the 9 palaces with people, that if you can't make a decision or you can't make that change, the universe will make that change for you.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen if you're resisting change.
And that's opposed to that ability to cultivate a transformational mindset, really cultivating a positive sense of change in your life. If that's the case, then we say you're starting to be the captain of your own ship. And I love this phrase. It's kind of an odd phrase. It's coursing the winds. This is a Chinese philosophy, Chinese medicine phrase. And what it means is that you're controlling your ship's direction and you're navigating your life towards the end result that you're looking for, versus being tossed this way and that by harsh winds of change.
It's about maybe taking a little bit of time to recognize I'm not quite happy, but this is my life. It's not really cool. It's not really working out for me. You have to look and see, what am I going to do about this life? Or am I just going to, oftentimes I'll tell people in a session, we can work on this now or we can talk about it in 5 years. It doesn't really matter to me. What does it matter to you? So embracing the idea that change might be hard might be better than just letting it stand still. Also, then I say, put your head in the sand. You can put your hand in the sand too. But the head in the sand, and not do anything. Some people just get in that mindset. It could get worse if I try to make a change. So I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. And for me personally, Jay, I can say that when I graduated from college, I just didn't know what I really wanted to do in life. And I tried various things and nothing really sparked my interest at first. So I just went with the flow and, I got into the workforce and then I got good at something and then I got even better and my salary gave me kind of a comfortable life. But it wasn't fulfilling my spirit, that life. It wasn't what my spirit wanted to do. And I felt this lack. And yet the money that I was making was very enticing. And then I found something that made me totally engaged with my life.
Chinese medicine.
Yes. Chinese.
Right. Alchemy.
Yes.
Chinese medicine at that point, yeah.
I just fell in love with Chinese medicine, the 5 elements and alchemy, and this idea that we could change. But that meant I needed to change my career, which I'm not going to say was easy at all. It was hard, but it was my Wu Wei, my inspired action to completely change my life.
I know you had a nice life before that. It was easy. It was comfortable. You were challenged on a lot of levels. You had a family growing. It would have been much easier for you to just stay the way you were coursing, you were going, but that wasn't where your heart was.
For sure. And the corporate job I had was very comfortable, but not at all what I kind of came to this life to do. And that's where it's easy to get stuck.
Yeah, I think that career, if you're talking about career, that's one of the first palaces that's on my board. And that is what a lot of people get stuck in. They get slotted into a job or they got this job, they think that was the one. And guess what? They realize very early on that it's not the one and they still stick with it. We see it over and over when you allow yourself to get too complacent and you do get stuck in that career and you don't love it and you aren't really thriving. You're just surviving. The money's good or it's good enough. I hear that a lot. The money was good enough. The hours are good enough. I get vacation, but I don't love it, but I tolerate it. And, my parents are off my back or my spouse needs my help. I've heard every possible thing, but when you come down to it and your heart is not in it, you don't love it, then it can start to slide into other palaces, like the health palace. It can often rear its ugly head, make you sick, and then you can't go back to work, or the relationship breaks down, or all of them, the dominoes. We've talked about that before, how this one decision kind of sets off all the dominoes, and then
yeah. And this is exactly what
breaks
happened
out,
to me,
yeah.
Jay. I was one of those people. The corporate life wasn't a healthy life for me. That's what actually got me interested in Chinese medicine. So, it might have been awesome for someone else. That's not to say that someone else wouldn't be rocking the corporate job. But for me, it actually caused me to get endometriosis, which then prompted me to get surgery that didn't work. And finally, I just tried Chinese medicine out of desperation. And wow, that was a game changer because I just couldn't wrap my head around how it worked. And being a curious person, I was getting better. So I wanted to know why. I needed to know more. And the rest is obvious. I found my calling through my health palace struggles.
Yeah. And don't you think, Leta, when we look back on our lives, we see that the Spirit is weirdly guiding us, calling us, dropping hints, putting a breadcrumb path to where you need to go. The footsteps, you have to talk about the footsteps are right in front of you.
Yes.
Sometimes you just can't see them, or you're afraid to take them, or take a chance, or a leap of faith. I can go, there's so many words to describe this. Yes. It's right in front of you.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
Like if a person is in a career they don't love, in fact, they swear to themselves they're never going to do it again. And then they're surprised when, for some reason, much later on, they decide to do it again because it's the easy.
It's more money, better hours. That person they hate is gone, but it's the same kind of job in a different scenario. And there's another 5 years or 10 years or 15 years that goes by, and they still hate it.
Or they can't even get the job anymore. Maybe they took time off and now they're going back to work and they're surprised that they can't find a job in that field. And yet it's the one they swore they would never, ever go back to.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. I mean, and there's so many fields now where that is just the case. I always joke that the barista person behind the counter at Starbucks has a master's degree.
Yeah.
Or multiple degrees. I mean, they just can't, but they might be happy.
Yeah, that might be their thing.
That might be their thing, to see people, greet people, help people. Or it's just a job that they're holding the pattern to of where they're going next.
And sometimes, you get into a career and you don't really know why you're doing that career, and you try something new out and maybe you love studying it. It's a topic you just need for your life in some way. Let's say you decide to go into finance, but you used to be, I don't know, some kind of teacher or something, like a really big career change, and you go study it and you love it, and then you go try to work in that field and it doesn't work out and you hate it. Maybe you just needed to learn that information for your life path, 10 years from now. Maybe that information is...
Maybe that reason is not there yet.
Yes.
But, and now you've wasted, or now I'm going to say wasted, take that back. And so now you've spent time expanding.
Right.
But maybe in that time...
It looks like a waste, but it's not.
But maybe during that time, your family got stressed, or you couldn't support the family because you were in school and you felt really guilty. And now you feel really even worse that you now are not going to go into the financial institute, and you got to start over again on something else that you truly want to do.
But the interesting thing is, were you inspired at the very beginning?
Yes.
Was it your Wu Wei all along? And 10 years from now, you might be like... Now I get it. That's why I did that.
Absolutely. I definitely think that we're all collecting challenges and skills and learning and knowledge. And if you can get into your alignment, it'll all come into play for sure. And I think that's what the Wu Wei is like, walking those steps in front of you. You just have to look down, place your feet, take that leap of faith, take that step, and your heart is open and saying, hey, this is what I got to do.
Yeah, and it's the ability to be spontaneous in your life, not basing all of your actions on what your logical mind is telling you what to do. The shoulds that society has us doing all the time.
Yeah, Wu Wei is the action of the non-action. It's the Tao Te Ching. That's what it's all about. I find that term non-action confusing when I try to explain it to people. But that is why we decided to call this podcast, the Inspired Action podcast, you can even think about it if you're more athletic of being in the zone when you're just kind of like doing and you're not thinking. You see the footsteps before they happen. You don't force to make it happen. You just do. You don't know how. You've already done your training. You just do. You just go. You just in the flow. There's so many ways you can also say that, but before I go on that other thought, Leta, I just wanted to say that, a lot of times people have a really hard time putting themselves first. Mm-hmm. So this is often a big thing I see, whether it's siblings, parents, partners, friends. I know people who have stayed in jobs for 15 years because they liked the people. They hated the job. The money wasn't even that good, but they loved that family, and their family needed their financial support to contribute. So they put everyone before their own needs. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I see is that people have a really hard time putting themselves first.
You often say it's good to be selfish, or you like to say be a shellfish.
Be a shellfish. Yeah, self-cultivation, I say, is selfish, but in a good way. So this is kind of like giving yourself permission to maybe get back on track to where you should be going.
Yeah.
You might have gotten just slightly askew. And it's not a bad thing that you got off track. And you could stay off track and still be happy and live a great life. But do you really want to get back to that authentic path that you're on? That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And when it happens, you're in the flow. There's that footprint. It's the next footstep that's already laid out for you. The next footstep, the next footstep. You just get a sense. This is where I need to go. This is the road I need to take. This is the direction. And when you're in your Wu Wei or living the Wu Wei, it's got a feeling of optimism, and it feels happier, and it's not as stressful.
Yeah, it is hard to explain. I'm an athlete and an artist, so I do all kinds of things, and to get into the zone, it is a little bit of like setting the stage to feel safe enough to go into that position, whether or not it's athletic or doing art or even writing. It's like the flow of creativity, that force inside of me. I have cultivated enough, whatever that means, or gotten rid of enough bad habits, whatever that means, to be able to allow it to flow.
Yeah. And in Taoism, they would actually apply this concept also to our spirituality itself, getting into that flow state and practicing in it so that every moment of every day is easy.
Yeah, I love that, because that has definitely helped me in the last 15 years or so of totally. I think it's brought it to another level. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, it becomes this where you don't have to think about what you're doing. I also like to think of it as the phrase, being an instrument of the divine, which I mentioned at the beginning. That's a phrase that we get from acupuncture. When an acupuncturist is putting a needle into the point, and the needle is not the instrument. You think the needle is doing all the work, but it's really the person holding the needle that becomes the instrument, not the needle itself. Something is moving that person as if that person is an instrument. And I also want to say it's like we can even do this work in acupuncture without the needle. A lot of people don't understand that it's not the needle doing it, it's the person. So a lot of our work at the Alchemy Healing Center is with our fingers becoming needles. We are non-needling the point, so to speak, and it's because the practitioner becomes that instrument of the divine, standing between heaven and earth and just channeling whatever needs to be done in a treatment.
The practitioner is the needle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think the same thing with sports or art. When you see someone who's in the zone, who's just in that moment, they're it's almost like something else is the driving force.
Yeah.
Something else is moving them.
Right. And even if it's unknown or feels a little scary to walk, these mysterious footprints that are laid out in front of you, maybe on a path you've never taken before, like a new career, and you really don't know where you're headed. At least you can welcome change.
Yes, it's starting. I want to put it up on my wall, momentum.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll tell people if they have water in the top, and I like to say, it doesn't mean you don't have to do this and this and this. I say, do anything. to get you out of that frozen, stuck place because you're starting to trickle, you're starting to flow, you're moving forward. So momentum, it doesn't have to be this giant momentum. Momentum could be like tiny, but it's a little bit of something moving in that direction.
And this is the tricky part. I mean, how do we stay ahead of the change or flow with that change?
Well, I think this conversation for me as a, strategist or as air quotes here, coach, always begins with this simple question. And I ask it almost every time. If I don't, then I usually ask it in the middle because I forgot. Are you happy? That's not a big question now, is it? However, boy, is it a big question. 3 little words. Are you happy? So if you can some people can't even get to that. Our default in this world is, yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's fantastic. We're done. Go, you can leave. And they're like, no, not that kind of happy. Right? And then we start to look and I'm like, well, I point to the 9 palaces, like, which one? Some people say all of them. Some say 1, the 2. Usually it's career, relationship, money, which is abundance, or health. Those are the 4 dominoes. So if you can just go to the learning center, take a meditate on your own. I don't care. Get a journal, do whatever. Ask yourself, are you happy? That is your starting point.
Yes. And that leads to the next question, which is, what do you really want? And that's really about if and when it's your time to die, will you die feeling like you have unfinished business? Or will you die with a sense of completion and fulfillment?
And what would bring that sense of completion and fulfillment? You may not have that exact answer, but if you're in a job, relationship, financially stressed, anything that's not working, then you need to make some kind of change.
And this is what alchemy is about. Not being afraid to engage this question, not being afraid to live the life your spirit is guiding you towards.
And here's a little bit, being accountable to yourself for the decisions that you make, especially the ones that you don't want to make, that may be hard to make, maybe might look to other people like you're putting yourself first, maybe even for the first time. So that's that leap of faith. That's that trust. That's that getting over that fear. And again, momentum, tiny baby steps. I always say baby steps if they're really, really, really stuck. Baby steps.
It's a good point about being accountable because, many of us, I think all of us, often get into a blame mode. We blame outer circumstances for why we made the decisions we made that we didn't want to make, the ones that took us away from what we really wanted in our lives. But the honest truth is, we're the ones who made those decisions. No one else made them for us. And so we took some detours on our path through life as a result.
And I think that's very, very, very common. And that's okay because like the teacher example who maybe didn't want to go, they didn't want to teach anymore. Maybe they went into finances. They just discovered that it was great learning about it. But in the real world, they didn't want to do it. But maybe, like you said, down the road, they're going to be a rock star with the family finances, or they're going to help people invest, or they're going to put that use to something else that may be part of their lives. It might not be a career, but it's definitely a font of knowledge that they may tap into.
Good point. And because the career palace is also called the knowledge palace, we sometimes use career as an excuse to learn something that we really didn't want to make our vocation. We just wanted to learn that information.
Yeah, we live in a society that doesn't really support the idea of learning information just for the fun of it, because it might not be generally a good idea to learn because maybe you're not making enough money or you have to do something else to feed and clothe and house. So we feel like we have to make it a career if we want to learn it. And that is a lot of what goes on, especially in the United States.
But if we're really in our Wu Wei and it's leading us to learn something new, and we don't want to wed ourselves to it as a career.
Did you say wet or wed?
Wed.
Oh, okay, I was just sure. I wasn't sure about that. Like, what?
No,
wed ourselves?
No, we're not going to wed ourselves.
Oh my gosh. Get out the diapers.
Marry ourselves to it as a career. That's inspired action. It means it's important, but maybe we just don't know why yet.
Yes, and so that brings us all the way back to the first question, the first stage of alchemy. What do I really want? Before you can ask, am I happy? Well, actually, I'm happy maybe is first. Then you can start to explore. Okay, what do I really want? Many of us have never asked ourselves either one of those questions other than casual, but I want you to ask yourself, only as yourself, not as a wife a partner, husband, child, parent, just you asking yourself, what do I really want?
Yeah, completely open-endedly and honestly. Now, what your parents want you to want and what your partner wants you to want and what your children want you to want, your neighbors, your boss, your coworkers, leave it all.
Who gives a bleep? For 1 second, take that time for you. And that you might have to ask yourself a few times. We do have meditation. It's free in the Learning Center. And but you can do it on your own. You don't need a meditation. But if you need that help to get that prompt, to be able to find that quiet space, to get the answer from the universe.
Oh, and money. You have to leave money out of it before you answer that question.
Yes.
That messes it up a lot.
A lot. I often have this little thing I do if I say, hey, I didn't want to tell you, but I'm like a multimillionaire. Wish that, here, I'm going to give you $5 million. Let's make your decisions now. Wow. I used to say $1 million. $1 million is not good enough anymore. Now $1 million's like, I'll stay unhappy. But $5 million, now $5 million opens the door and they're like, it's like they things come out of nowhere that all of a sudden they want to do or always wanted to do or dreamt of doing. So you're right. Take the money out and imagine that. And now that does make it a little complicated if you're the breadwinner or you've already spent like $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 on your education. And now you want to be a landscape designer or you want to go do work in Starbucks because you get to see people all day. Yes. And that makes you so happy.
I know people that love it.
I know. They've been in a cubicle for 20 years and they haven't seen people. They don't talk and they go to do a job like that. And they're like, whoa, they just love it. So whatever it is, if you can take the money out, at least just start to see where your heart wants to go.
Because actually where your heart wants to go, it's almost never about the money. I mean, money feels like it equals freedom, but sometimes when we think it's about money, we end up giving our freedom away for the money. So we think it will buy our freedom, and instead it becomes chains, as in like shackles. So in other words, you're making agreements that's actually giving away your freedom because you're taking on responsibilities like with a salary.
Yeah, and hours and all kinds of stuff. So can you ask yourself, is it really about not making enough money or is it something deeper, something else?
And that something else is probably the thing that would give you a sense of fulfillment or completion in your life. And that's why we've been talking about the what do I really want question in the first stage of alchemy.
And we can even go before fulfillment and completion. Happy. Happy. Does it make you happy? And that's important. If that's the one thing I can express today, happy is important.
Yeah.
And I often say you can be happy on the way to happiness. You don't have to, it's not one or the other. It's like I'm happy or I'm not happy. You can be happy on the way to getting your real happiness, the deeper happiness.
And we also say when you ask yourself this, what do I really want question, you want your higher self, whatever you want to call it, your spirit self to answer it for you. You don't want that mind, that logical mind, that thing I like to call the monkey mind to answer it for you. Because if you can start to get the real answer to this question, then you have a chance of being happy on the way to happiness.
And then the Wu Wei comes and opens up your heart and your alignment, and then things just start happening. Obstacles just disappear on the way to getting whatever it is you want to do in your life. So as always with this podcast, we're hoping that we're inspiring you to challenge yourself to ask better questions.
Ask better questions.
Drink. Ask better questions for transformation. How's that?
Yes, drink.
And remember, this is a journey and a process. It could take months. It could take years. There's no time limit, but
it could take lifetimes.
It could take lifetimes. But if you're stuck, if you're frozen, if you're afraid, take a deep breath and just start somewhere.
And if you feel really hurried, there's no need to hurry. Once you start following your Wu Wei, you can only be in the place you're in at the exact right moment and time. So you don't have to feel a sense of urgency either. That's Wu Wei, flowing freely with ease.
Sure, that's definitely, I love the way you just said that, flowing freely with ease. But you have to kind of get that certain level of consciousness. You may have already achieved a very high level of consciousness in which case you're traveling with us on this journey wherever you are. There's no hierarchy. Everyone can fly and flow and free. There's, everyone can be moving upward and forward. Every day is a new start to your journey. You don't have to be miserable on the road to happiness. That doesn't sound too good, right?
No, I like the happy on the way to happiness.
You can actually be happy while you're trying to get to your happier place.
And that's why we have this goal to this podcast. The goal is for all of us to begin to be masters of our own lives. That little boat on the sea where those waves, maybe we're annoyingly tossing your boat here and there. It becomes like magical. These magical waves are now bringing you to new adventures, and everything feels like it's meant to be.
Sure. So if you're captaining the Titanic or the USS Minnow, whatever your ship is, okay, I love in Chinese theory calling it coursing the winds, like Leta said, because the wind is a metaphor for change. So take your boat, whether it's big or little, see where that wind is, see where that course of change is. Where are you going to be inspired? Because you can see that change is imperative if you want different outcomes. It's unavoidable that we want to be exhilarated and inspired by that change. It will happen.
And, I think that's where we all want to live. We don't want to live a life where we're always surprised and in a reactive state of mind or even sleepwalking through life all of the time. We want to have an idea of where we're going and an idea that we can set a course to our destination.
Okay, number one, make it so. You beat me on that Star Trek reference. Okay, and on that note,
aye, Captain.
Yes, so here's one more, my last Star Trek. Engage.
Yeah.
All right, have a good day.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast, and you've reached the end. Woohoo! Why not celebrate a little bit and click that subscribe button right there? We love having you with us on this journey, and we want it to continue.
You can also rate and review this podcast. And if you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews, and your reviews help other people find this podcast as well. You can also be a part of this podcast yourself by submitting a voice recording message and emailing it to us at leta@inspiredactionpodcast.com or jay@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
And if you want, you can join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram.
Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and remember to hug the dog.
We've also got some... Where's that coming from?
Not me. It's you. Oh, you're getting bombarded with the dingers. Ding, 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 ding. Not me, it's you.
Okay.